Let's turn to Doug Luzader now with the very latest on these West Coast protests. Hi, Doug.
Good morning. The president is warning California officials not to stand in the way of law and order as the demonstrations and riots in the Los Angeles area are entering their fourth day now. President Trump has superseded California Governor Gavin Newsom, calling in hundreds of National Guard troops to back up law enforcement agencies. LA's police chief said his officers were being pelted with everything from fireworks to cinder blocks.
We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers.
President Trump would have none of it. Writing on Truth Social, I am directing the Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies, to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion and put an end to these migrant riots. California Governor Gavin Newsom, meantime, said Trump was acting as a dictator, writing on X, I have formally requested the Trump administration rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return them to my command. Now, the president has promised to back up law enforcement officers. He is now at Camp David after meeting there yesterday with a number of officials, including, he says, generals and admirals on a range of issues. Todd and Carly, back to you.
All right, Doug Luzader live for us in Washington. Doug, thank you. Let's bring in former Deputy Assistant DHS Secretary and former Acting ICE Director Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, good morning to you. So how do you feel about the president's handling of this versus Los Angeles and California leadership?
He's handling this appropriately, and unfortunately, he's had to take action because they're refusing to do so. And you've seen, both Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom just basically not take any responsibility and essentially take the side of the rioters against law enforcement. And it's not just against ICE law enforcement, as you saw from that police chief. It's against their own law enforcement agents that are getting things thrown at them, getting assaulted, putting in harm's way. And it's just disgraceful. And we've seen this escalate over the past couple of months, where the standard position of the Democratic Party seems to be defame ICE agents, support violence against them. We saw it in Newark. We're seeing it here. And it's really disgraceful. When you see the statements come out from Governor Newsom, from other politicians, they are on the side of the rioters. And it's really disgraceful. And they're certainly making it even worse. And President Trump did what he did because he had to, because his responsibility is to keep the American citizens safe as well as the law enforcement agents safe, which the Democrats in California had no interest in doing.
President Trump is invoking 10 U.S.C. 12406 to unilaterally send in the National Guard. That code section, as you well know, Jonathan, deals with rebellion. Is Donald Trump on strong legal footing here that this is, in fact, a rebellion, and as a result, he can send in the National Guard to a state without that state's leaders signing off?
Yes, he can. And unfortunately, the reason the leader isn't signing off because the leader, Governor Newsom, again, is on the side of the rioters. But he can send in the National Guard to prevent the rioting that's hindering his enforcement or the United States' enforcement of the law, which in this case, the immigration laws, which again is President Trump's responsibility. It's not just a political issue. His responsibility is to enforce the immigration law, is to deport illegal aliens. So yes, he's on strong footing. It's a shame that Governor Newsom would rather let his city, the city of Los Angeles, burn rather than support law enforcement and protect the citizens of California. But it's always politics with him, and we've seen it time and time again. They put the interests of illegal aliens and this open borders agenda ahead of the interests of the American people and the safety of law enforcement and the safety of the American people.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm so glad you brought that up, because all of this was sparked by ICE arrests of criminal illegal immigrants, including convicted murderers and sex offenders. One of the people arrested was an illegal immigrant who was convicted of shooting up a high school graduation party, killing an 18-year-old 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. So you bring up the politics of this. From a political standpoint, you have Maxine Waters, Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom criticizing these ICE arrests and taking the side of the protesters who are waving anti-American slogans, not American flags, Mexican flags. This feels like Black Lives Matter all over again. When the Democratic Party says they no longer believe this, they repeatedly show that they do. So how does this look politically to the rest of the country who is watching all of this unfold?
I think it looks very bad for the Democratic Party. I'm glad you brought up the BLM riots of 2020, because remember back then the Democrats did the exact same thing. They always took the side of the rioters versus law enforcement. And their view, and I think this is partially their view now, is that they create enough chaos. Some of it will be attributed to Donald Trump and it will harm him politically. So I think that's part of the move here. I don't think the American people are going to buy it at all this time. I think everyone was scarred by the BLM riots and feel burned in so many ways at the way politicians handle that and let public safety become secondary to that political movement. And the average American supports law enforcement, supports ICE, supports deporting criminal illegal aliens, that's what the Trump administration is doing. And one of the other instances that got a lot of resistance was when agents were serving search warrants, which were signed by a federal judge. Again, we've heard so much talk from the Democratic Party about you shouldn't say anything bad about federal judges. Well, these were federal judges issued search warrants, and the Democrats are taking the side of people obstructing and fighting against agents executing search warrants and essentially doing their job and doing the required job.
Yeah, and to that overall point that you and Carly were just discussing, when it comes to how these Democrat cities have fared throughout history in moments like this, the New York Post editorial board asking the absolute perfect question this morning: how far would Democrats have let the LA riots go if Trump had not sent in the National Guard? I think based upon previous history, it could have gone pretty far and could have potentially even turned deadly. Jonathan Fahey, got to leave it there. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.